Hi, and welcome to GaleForceWins. I'm Alan Dale, and with me, as always, my good buddy from the East End of St. John's, Jerry Carew.
This little enterprise that you and I have got put together has allowed us to rekindle some old relationships, mine and yours. But now we're going to have Len Pecore on, and I'm very excited about that.
Exciting to have Len on the podcast for sure. Not many guys have the courage to start a ship design company in the downturn of the shipbuilding industry in Canada and then survive that and come out the other end and doing great things. Len is the founder and chairman of the board of Genoa Design. Len, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, Alan. Hi, Jerry. And hello, everybody. I'm Leonard Pecore. I'm founder and chair of Genoa Design International. So I was born in Nova Scotia, and like many people who end up in Newfoundland, I married a Newfoundlander. So in 91, we moved to Newfoundland. I went back to school at that time after a medium career in the Canadian Navy. Went back to Marine Institute and studied naval architecture. And I also joined my local naval unit. Might know a couple of people there, HMCS Cabot, and served at Cabot until 1995.
What part of Nova Scotia, Len?
Oh, well, I'm a Navy brat. So I grew up a few years in Dartmouth, and then we moved out to BC, moved back to Dartmouth, down to Virginia. And then we moved back to a place called Martins Point, which is about halfway between Chester and Mahone Bay. I lived in Martins Point for a year, then went to Acadia. So I've stomped all over. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Tell me about your time in the Navy. What'd you do there?
Oh, well, that was a lot of fun. I joined in '87 as what they call a Mars officer. I believe the trade still exists, and basically you're just en route to command. So I progressed through my training until 91 when I got married. And at that time I put in for my release, knew I didn't want to do it full time. And we ended up moving back to Newfoundland.
Well, that's fantastic. So you moved back to Newfoundland. You married an island girl, and I married a girl from Prince Edward Island. And I often tell people when you marry a girl from Prince Edward Island, it's like marrying a vegetarian. It pretty much makes you a vegetarian. So I moved to Prince Edward Island. You moved to Newfoundland. That's fantastic. So you find yourself in Newfoundland, and you're at the Marine Institute. Tell us about your education there. How was that program?
Well, for somebody that took an extra year to get through my degree back in the 80s, I had a lot of fun at Acadia University. Then joined the Navy, had some leadership under my belt, a little more maturity, did the program at Marine Institute. I chose the technology program, the three-year program, simply because 6 years in a bachelorette of engineering was just too daunting when I was approaching 30 at the time. So I got my technology diploma in naval architecture at that time. And I guess you would label me a mature student going through. So I really, I knew what I was doing. I knew that I was taking a few years out of the workforce in order to build up an education, in order to do something better that I hope to do. So I really threw myself into it 150%, came out with good marks. And I made some industry connections while I was in the program. And that really, I didn't get a job when I left Marine Institute, but I got an opportunity, which was conversion of a vessel. So on the basis of that, I formed Genoa Design.
So, okay, was there a lot of connection with industry and university for you back in those days?
No, unless you chose to do it yourself, which I did.
Right.
We had a this, and I believe the program, I know the program still has a final year design project. And basically you go through, take a full year and you design a vessel. You have free reign to choose what, how, and why. And some people choose something very fun and exciting and unusual, because it'd probably be your only chance in life to design a sail-powered cruise vessel that operates in the Antarctic. I was really rather boring, and I chose an oil spill response vessel and contacted some local a company, an oil spill response company, ECRC, and worked with them and made additional contacts and really set myself up for coming out of school and hopefully being able to say, I've done some real work.
Yeah, and so it's an important piece, right, is to make those connections. And I think academia is moving towards trying to facilitate that in the student experience. Now, certainly the forward-thinking ones are in their capstone projects at the end, and that's fantastic. So you decided that you were going to start Genoa Design. What did that look like at the beginning?
That looked like me in my bathrobe sitting in a 6x6 room on the side of our home with a makeshift desk and a compact 386 computer at the time. That's what it looked like. It was pretty rudimentary. I mean, it was, yeah, it was as small as you can be. I was the only employee earning $20,000 a year, something like that. But you know, ignorance is bliss. I didn't know what I knew what I was missing. There were a number of graduates from the program that immediately left Newfoundland, went down to the United States to work in shipyards, put in long hours at a relatively good pay. At that time, your only option was really being a junior draftsperson. And I was, with the Navy behind me, with the leadership under my belt, with my practical experience at sea, I just, call it arrogant if you like, but I thought I was a little bit beyond that. So right. I chose to strike it out on my own. And we had our oldest daughter now, she was very young at the time, just a year old. And, the thought of moving somewhere outside the province with no family support, one of the parents working 50, 60-hour weeks, that's, it's a pretty stark lifestyle. Yeah. So we made choices.
You can't underestimate the importance of that social net around you and everything. It gives you the foundation from which to step off, for sure. So you saw that foundation, you appreciated it, and you decided you were going to step off. You were going to create your own thing. Was there any customers at the time?
Well, there was one, and it was the ECRC. It was the company that I worked with in school. They turned around and they bought an old barge, and they said, we want to convert it to an oil spill response platform. Would you be interested? And I said, yeah, of course. And they said, well, we're not going to hire you, but we would hire a consultant or a company. So I formed a company and off I went. And at that time, the only other option was really the local fishing fleet. Mm-hmm. At least it was the only option for me. So there were a lot of really bottom dollar, dirty jobs around fishing boats and lifting lines and stability booklets and planning modifications when somebody wants to do something to their boat. And it was good practical experience, great practical experience. Probably one of the cooler things I did was design the Matthew that's presently in Bonavista. Mm-hmm. So the company, the engineering company that was awarded the entire project for the building and the ship, they hired me, Genoa, to design the Matthew. So that was actually really cool. And yeah, I got to do a lot of historical research. I created my own assumptions about what the vessel should look like, why it would look like that, looking at, what the heck did these discoverers need? What did they want? How many barrels of fruit did they bring with them? How many, did they want to anchor off, or did they want to go into every little nook and cranny? And so I made a lot of assumptions, worked with a couple of other historical people, designed the ship, and it was built in 97. So that was really cool. But in 99, 2000, I was working on the some BC ferries that were being constructed at the time. And I would do my work here in Newfoundland, package it all up into an email, hit send, and about 4 or 5 hours later, they would receive it in British Columbia and then go through and check my work, make any changes, email it back. And again, 4 or 5 hours later, I would get the email in return. We've come a long way.
Yeah.
But that one exercise sparked the idea of, I could do this remotely for customers anywhere in the world. And technology is only going to keep getting better. So I changed the name from Genoa Design to Genoa Design International, and brought in a partner at the time. He threw in a little bit of money, came in at a 20% partnership, and off we went, and then started hiring a couple people and started doing projects. So.
And where was your initial focus? Because this would have been, of course, late 90s. The ships of the Canadian fleet at the time would have been built, and we would have been in that lull in shipbuilding in Canada.
Oh, yeah.
Well, where was your clients back then?
I think I just named them all. I honestly, aside from a couple of fishing vessels, the Matthew, the oil spill response vessel, the BC ferries, it was tough.
Yeah.
You really scrape to earn a living. And I, thankfully, my wife had a full-time job with the university at the time. So, in many ways, she supported our family while I scraped the lining of the barrel to earn what little income I could.
Lynn, I got to ask you, and that's an intriguing point for every entrepreneur, and how long was that scraping going on, and what kept you going while you were scraping?
I think there is an entrepreneurial gene in people, or there's it's an innate characteristic. Probably that's a better word, or perhaps a personality characteristic. Something in you wants to achieve. Something in you enjoys planning your own destiny and then fulfilling your own destiny and having all of those things within your own power to make or break, win or lose, succeed or fail. A heck of a lot of failure. So when you think of somebody entrepreneurial, you think of a bit of eternal optimism grounded with a healthy dose of pessimism and ability to self-critique and look at the risks. But really that optimism has to outweigh it in the early years. And you cannot let daily traumas or challenges pull you down. So what keeps you going is, oh my gosh, they're building a Matthew and somebody's interested in having me do it. I worked at Clarenville Dry Dock. They refit an old ship there. I just, you find something and you immerse yourself in it and take a lot of pride in what you do, and then face the reality that as a one person entrepreneur. While you're working, you're not looking for work. And while you're looking for work, you're not working.
Right.
So that's a difficult cycle to get past. Yeah. Yeah. So
Did
Yeah,
you,
that's
sorry, did you ever feel that the pessimistic side, you were going down that rabbit hole? And if so, like, who pulled you out? You,
I
someone
would
else?
actually, I would say pessimism is perhaps the wrong word.
Yeah.
I think I spoke incorrectly. Not the ability to step outside yourself and look in and critique
mhm.
and look at what's
Right.
ahead and what can go wrong and what you're going to do about it today. I think that's a better way. I don't know how to summarize that into one word. That's not pessimism. Pessimism is a bit of despair or always seeing the bad side. And
Right.
that was the wrong thing to say.
Lenny, you described in that conversation there, you saw the technology, you knew that there was a better way to do this, and you knew that technology would eventually support that. That's looking well over the horizon with a vision. How did you, back in those days? I mean, this was in the days of dial-up. Uh, what did you think it would look like?
15 kps.
Yeah.
Goodness. I didn't know. I wasn't educated enough to know. I knew something was happening.
Right.
I blindly went for it. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, blind, but on a solid foundation, right? We talk about you had the foundation of family around you in Newfoundland, and that's so valuable. But to have the support of your partner in the journey is incredible. Jerry and I are fortunate to have that as well, and it means so much. You're not in this alone when you've got the support of your partner, and they're propelling you, even if it's just quietly at the dinner table, to allow you to vent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's so many things that ground you. And I guess that's why that was part of the choice to stay. Friends, partner, children, family, extended family. I mean, that all brings you comfort and, remove yourself from that. And I think it exposes, I mean, how do you feel when you're all alone? How do loneliness is a scary thing. And, even with your partner and with one or two children, there's still an element of loneliness if you're in a strange land with strange food. Hats off to people that do that. I mean, I think of people today that, and the people that immigrate to Canada, I mean, how brave are they? Just 100%, immensely brave. So I have a lot of admiration for people that pack up from their home and come here for opportunity. And maybe that's what prevent me. I didn't see the opportunity down there as being much different than the opportunity here. I personally felt that the opportunity here was greater because it was more within my control. I had more influence.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's a great point, because there is opportunity. There still is lots of opportunity in Newfoundland for sure, in Atlantic Canada, in Canada, plenty of opportunity. Tell me this, back then, what was the ecosystem like surrounding your environment, shipbuilding, ship design? Was government leaning into it? Were there academic institutions that were supporting it? Was there a solid ecosystem back there, or was it just growing?
I think it was just growing, but I answer that with a healthy dose of really not being fully aware of what was out there. As in the early 2000s, maybe some of the things that we did here at Genoa, and I did, traveling down to the United States to look for work, which was supported by our government at the time, and a strong encouragement to export. It could have been coincidental. I could have luckily embarked on that at the same time that government was putting more of a focus to support local companies and export and product development and all the things that especially our provincial government likes to do, and the federal government through ACOA. They were similarly trying to help companies grow and get better. So yeah, the comment on the ecosystem at the time, it was pretty sparse in the 90s. Yeah, I really think it was. Yeah, it really was. And I remember going back to speak with students at the Marine Institute in the mid 2000s. And in 10 years, it turned on its head. I mean, it was incredible. Students were coming out and they could ask for anything they wanted to, and they got it.
So, okay, I want to unpack that a little bit, Len. So you go back, you're an industry guy now, you're out there, you're doing the work, you're designing, you're in the business, but yet you take the opportunity to go back and talk to the students. Tell me about that. Why was that important for you to get back into the classroom and chat with those students and tell them what was happening in industry?
Trying to round up my thoughts here on that. There's an element of, certainly there's an element of wanting to give back to your community and support your community. I think I always felt an affinity to the Marine Institute. They changed, that program and the instructors and the school changed my life, and helped me exit one career and enter another one. So of course I'll go back and talk to the students. And really, I thought about my time there and how much I would have valued if people from industry were coming in to speak to us beyond just the job fair or beyond the industry day, just to take a bit of time out of their day to come in and tell me what it was like or what I could expect when I was graduating. So I simply thought it was the right thing to do. Yeah.
So
you're touch a lot.
You continue to do that today. You're still involved with the Marine Institute. You're involved with other organizations, ACADA, TechNL, Genesis Center.
Yes.
Tell me the importance of all of that, and not just you being involved in it. That's admirable that you're giving back in all of those pathways. But tell me the importance of all of those ecosystems working together from your point of view.
Yeah. I'm not exceptional. I'm very ordinary. So I don't know if I deserve any admiration, because there are many people out there that do far more work giving back to their community than I do. But that's what's in this place. That's what we've got here in this province, are people that learn something and then want to go back to the community and share it and teach, people that want to support, and whether it's supporting a social cause, or whether it's supporting an industry related cause or association or another company. There's been advisory boards, there are associations, there are nonprofits out there. It accompanies, I think, when you're at a certain level in your career and you feel a responsibility, you feel you've got something to share. And if you've got something to share, nobody really wants to have somebody show up and just dump all their BS all over the floor and and pretend that they know something. But if you've got something to share, I think it's worth putting yourself out there to give back and share. And there's so many people that are doing that. And because we're such a small province, you're going to keep connecting with. It starts small, but it takes no time to grow very quickly. And all of a sudden, you're really forming friendships and relationships with people that are doing something similar. And I mean, that's what this province needs. We all need to take some responsibility to be giving that. I mean, and look at you. You're sharing these stories and thoughts. You're rounding up people to share thoughts, to spread a word, to create a movement, to share the good news. And hopefully somebody grabs something that one of me or one of the many people that you will interview and say, that's awesome.
Right.
I could do that.
Yeah.
A little bit differently, but that's inspiring. And, and not just Newfoundland, but I think the whole world is turning more to that too. There is more of a social consciousness in our world. And in my work as a director, environmental, social governance, ESG, diversity, inclusion, all of these things are coming together to recognize the special qualities that an individual brings to anything. So not only are we looking at, I apologize if I'm rambling.
No, keep it going. This is exactly what we're after.
Not only are we looking at getting the stereotypical Newfoundlander to come in, but we're looking for diversity of ideas and approach and method and creativeness that will help grow this province into something bigger and better. So it all starts with an individual as a human being saying, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to give a little something back. And the more you learn, the more you can give back.
100%. I want to talk to you a little bit about, you talked about the size of Newfoundland and how easy it is. Some people would say, how can it possibly be done there? It's not big enough. It's got to be done in a bigger center. I seem to think the opposite. And that is, I think the size is to the advantage. It allows you to be agile and nimble, and you can work together as a group. And to me, if you can pull those pieces together and you're friends, you build friendships, you hit the nail on the head. You're a friend with the guy at ACOA. You're a friend with the guy at the company down the road. And the other beautiful thing about Newfoundland is that, honest to God, people want to see each other do well. They want to see people succeed and grow together. A rising tide floats all boats, and Newfoundlanders get it.
So please ask me, what are the beautiful things about starting a business in Newfoundland?
Len Pecore, what are the beautiful things about starting a business in Newfoundland?
Oh my God, I could talk for hours, but I'll try to summarize it like this. First of all, you talked about the 90s and the ecosystem, and I said perhaps it was coincidence in the 2000s when I really started to feel support. But I really started to feel support, along with many other businesses, from governments, associations, federal and provincial government, and community. So there's a lot of community support. And the really cool thing was when I started exporting and working in places that knew nothing about Newfoundland, you show up and people are so curious around the world about learning where we're from, what's it like, tell us about it, and can I come visit? And I've had people from the southern United States, Texas, Alabama, Louisiana come up here and be absolutely blown away. They are charmed. They are inspired and impressed. We have employees show up from other parts of the world that cannot believe how accessible nature is, how clean the water and the air is, how much freedom they've got to hit the trail and go for a hike, take their family wherever they want, how much safety there is here in Newfoundland when they set roots here. And the visitors, they feel it. And you know, you listen to the radio, and there's lots of shows where somebody comes here and is inspired, and they go home, and then they get them on the radio, and the person's, you know, well, tell us more about why we're wonderful. But there really is a unique charm. And I think in many respects, having lived in many parts of the world where they have charm and they have beauty, there's an authenticity to what we have here in Newfoundland that I think permeates everything we do. We are authentic in how we show up. There's no airs about us. What you see is what you get. And you know, there's a humility, an amazing humility about the companies and the people that are here in Newfoundland. And I think the people that come here pick up on that, and I think they adopt it. And there's a lot of weight in that. There's a lot of beauty in that. And it helps when you're going forth unto the world and trying to do what you do, sell something or provide a service to somebody. And when you show up in that authentic way, and you show up with a curiosity about others, but then they ask you about your home, and you've got these amazing stories to talk about things they've never seen before. Icebergs floating by, and we take these things for granted. The way the wind howls while the fog is blowing at high speed over you. And where else do you get that in the world?
Yeah.
And there's, you know, I often talk about down south, especially, you go to the beach or you go to the ocean, and nature just picks you up and holds you in her arms, and it's warm and it's sunny, and you can feel, and it's soothing, and the wind and the light breeze blows and the water is warm. But up here, nature, if you have any hair on the top of your head, nature grabs you by that and blows you and rips past you. But there is something amazingly alive about that. And I think we've got that edginess, that authentic edginess that is, it's just amazing. It's fascinating. It's amazing. I love sharing it. I love going down anywhere where I'm going in the world, whether it's Brazil or the United States or overseas, and given an opportunity to share all that. And people love to hear about it.
And Newfoundlanders like telling people about it too.
Yeah.
I might.
And I think a lot about what you're saying. And if I look, and anyone looks at a map and you see the Trans-Canada Highway on Newfoundland, it's the northern part of the island. There's so much of the south coast that's not even touched. I can't help but think what resources there are there for us to develop. What do you think is the future of this province?
Oh my gosh. That's a question. That's a really deep question, Jerry. And it's a tough time to ask that question.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, we're a little bit on the brink, but we're also at the starting gate for something amazing.
Right.
And we need some we need some fantastic leadership to take us off the brink and turn it into a starting gate. But I personally don't feel like, and I don't want to get myself in trouble, I personally don't feel like ripping natural resources out of Newfoundland is the way that we're going to prosper in the future. I think there's something better and more prosperous for us. And I wish I could wax eloquent about what that might be, but I don't know.
Well, you know what? It makes sense to me. I saw a video and I shared it on my LinkedIn profile, and I'll probably post a little bit as I mentioned it here. A young man, don't know him, posted a drone. He went on a sea-doo from Burgeo to Francois, took a hike up to the top of the hill, then he flew a drone. It's one of the most astounding videos I've ever seen about Newfoundland. And I look at it and I'm thinking it's untouched. You're right. To develop that and rip the resources out of that beauty would be a sin. So maybe it's a tourism type thing that we do, you know?
You know, Fogo Island and Zeta Cobb, Fogo Island Inn, and that's not the exact model, but it is proof that an unorthodox approach can be extremely successful. So in the Navy, when I was at Cabot, I had the opportunity to sail the standoff right around the island. And I think it was in 94 or 95 that I did that. And all we did was went around the island and supported the Sea Cadets. I had Charlie Raymond on board. Oh, I could probably name the crew. I was the CO. And what an amazing summer. We left St. John's and we made a left-hand turn. And we kept going until we made a left-hand turn back into St. John's. It took us 7 weeks, and the South Coast was jaw-dropping, amazing. And just 2 summers ago, I bought an old wooden Cape Island boat from Nova Scotia, from Lunenburg, and a buddy flew to Halifax with me. We went to Lunenburg and we sailed the boat from Lunenburg back to Conception Bay South. And I couple of things, didn't get the time I wanted, but we explored the South Coast a little bit because I remembered how amazing it was in the standoff. And it hasn't changed, and it is beyond fantastic. And to go in there in a peaceful, respectful way. And I've never been anywhere like that.
And I've traveled a lot in my career, and I tell you, I'd always come home in the dark. It was October 2019. I was coming home at around 5 o'clock. The sun was setting. I looked out the window to the South Coast. In 30 years, it was the very first time I flew over at that time. You just said it, jaw-dropping. It was astounding what I saw, and it's still with me.
You go into these, you sail into these little inlets. They're big inlets, and you sail in, and they go back kilometers. Yeah. They extend, some of them go back almost 5 kilometers inland, and you can continue to sail in. There's waterfalls, there's cliffs, there's mountains, there's abandoned, resettled communities. There's complete just wilderness. We stopped and anchored just a couple summers ago. We anchored in one of these inlets, and I went in, steamed in for about 45 minutes to an hour, came around a corner, and there's a perfect little spot to anchor for the night, and dropped the anchor, and there was just utter silence, absolute utter silence, absolute clarity in the skies to look at the stars. And on either side, these dark, almost mountains, not really, not Rocky mountains, but mountains on either side of the inlet.
And a vast majority of the And a vast majority of the world could only ever read about that, let alone see it. And it's in your backyard. It's fantastic. You talked about needing strong leadership, 100%. There's no doubt in my mind there's strong leadership in Genoa design. In and around the 2012 timeframe, shipbuilding was on the horizon for Canada, for sure. Things were starting to be talked about. Where were you in that time and space, Len? Where were you then?
A good way to bring me back, Alan, to talk about Genoa. So we did our projects. We had great success with some fantastic projects in the 2000s. Staten Island ferries, New York Cities, did a container ship down in the States. We did, I think at that time we did lots of offshore supply vessels and all this work, mostly in the United States, a little bit of work over in Italy. And around 2008, the recession hit. We didn't really feel it until a year, 18 months later, and it hit like a bomb. Just everything dried up. And at that time, we had a staff of close to 40 people. And I really, this is where the attributes of an optimistic entrepreneur play against you, because I was overly optimistic that things were going to turn around, and they did not. So I kept as many people as I could for too long. It took me too long to get down to a small core staff that could really handle the work that we had. And excuse me. There we go. I have a phone connected to my hearing aids.
Yep.
Give a second to, my dad was calling, my mom was in the hospital, and so I'm just, she's fine. So in the latter, 18 months for the recession to really hit, I made the best choices I thought I should make at the time. And around 2010, early 2011, I learned more about the National Shipbuilding Procurement Strategy. The government was starting to release more information and release more about shipyards that would be competing for this large amount of work to rebuild Canada's fleet. So here we are, a small skeleton staff, very, I think I was down to 16, 24 people at the time. And at the same time, really near-death experience. Genoa was not doing well. I was hemorrhaging money is what I was doing. And at the same time, this gigantic opportunity was coming up. And then we got our in, and we became part of the West Coast C-SPAN team to help the shipyard win the contract. So personally, I was able to really immerse myself into doing everything that I could do to support the shipyard's bid and proposal to become one of the 2 centers of excellence. Combine that with a company that's on the edge, and knowing that we were going to face work like we never faced it before, not really understanding what that meant, but we knew it was big. We knew it was big, and gee, maybe one day I'd be 50 people. But I knew we needed something better than what I had run Genoa at that time for 15 years. And I knew I needed something beyond my capabilities to take Genoa to a new phase. to grow the way it needed to grow, to be able to answer the call for this program. And
I'm going to stop you because I'm afraid of the direction you're going to go right now, because I want to go back just a tiny bit.
okay.
I want you to tell me, what was it that Vancouver Shipyard saw in you and your team? What made you stand out?
A combination of the expertise that we had in doing what we do, creating these 3D models, helping a shipyard create a complete IKEA package to build a ship, combined with some, I would call at the time, leading edge thoughts around manufacturing. There's a thing called lean manufacturing, which is a methodology of analyzing what you do, how you do it, and doing, making it simpler, making it better, getting more value out of it. Lots of a huge toolkit and mindset for approaching the way you work, combined with our reputation and our experience south of the border. So you put all those pieces together, and we weren't the shining star in Canada. We weren't the only ones. There were others that did what we did, but you put those pieces together, and they saw, maybe they saw some Newfoundland authenticity in us. But you put those pieces together, and they saw something. And we were able to add something different into their proposal to win the work. I suppose that's probably what they saw first, was our ability to contribute to that piece of work. So I talked about all of those things. When I wrote pages as part of that proposal, I talked about their engineering team's experience in this vessel and this vessel and this large vessel, and south of the border, and experience with some of the leading shipbuilders in North America, experience and deep knowledge base in lean manufacturing. I pointed out all these things. I think that's what they saw, and it was helpful. It wasn't, I'm sure that I put it all in context, but it was helpful as a part of their proposal, CSVAN's proposal, to win the piece of work under the National Shipbuilding Strategy. Yeah.
Len, when you knew that you were going to get the work with them or get in a relationship with them, how did that feel in the moment? Do you remember the moment?
Yes. Yeah. I remember when I first found out about it, was down in New Orleans at the time, and I got the news that, okay, let's meet next week and start talking about this. So I remember that moment. I remember the moment that it was, I remember many moments sitting by myself in hotel rooms in Houston or other places and just working on this over and over. And I also remember the moment that it was announced, and we were at our office on Glencoe Drive, and the government made the announcement of the two centers of excellence, and we ran out and got some bottles of champagne, brought them back to the office, and we all had a glass of champagne. Yeah.
That's hard work to get there, Len, and very impactful for a lot of people. Your effort there and your team's effort there resulted in a lot of great work for a lot of people, a lot of meaningful, a lot of people can raise families now because of that effort. Again, admirable. And I know you don't like that, but again, that's admirable for what you and your team were able to do there. But also you mentioned that it was around that time that you realized that, okay, maybe we need another style of leadership here. Tell me a little bit about the feeling of that, because here you are 15 years into building this thing. This is your baby. Genoa International Design is yours. When do you come to the realization that, okay, maybe I need to shift gears on this?
So throughout the years, my partner in crime, Gina, has always supported us in the background. And in her consulting work, she had a lot of exposure to whether it was, I would say, leading thinkers around operating businesses, starting businesses, forming strategies. That was the type of work she did. She helped companies get better, and along with many other things she did in her consulting company. But one of the more exciting things that she did was that, and she did that for Genoa. So probably in 2010, 11, 12, somewhere around there, I knew we needed that. And I remember having the conversation with my partner and saying, you know, we're going to do one of two things. There's this author, and he wrote this book, and I'm either going to bring him in, or we've got Gina, my partner, who has done that and many others. And I'd like to bring her in. So he said, let's do it. And so Gina joined us in 2012, I guess it was. So she already was an owner. And I think within her network, while we were considering it, her network of peers and business people said to her, why does Len have one business and you have this other one? And she had started a meeting center at the time and ran that. So she had a building and a property. And why are you guys working on your own initiatives? Why don't you work together? So a number of circumstances came together that she closed the meeting center and threw herself into this. And really that coincided with us being awarded the work. There was a foundation, and her approach to joining us was, I believe you're going to speak to her at some point. She will probably outline her, and I'm not going to go there, but she brought to us exactly what we needed. And Genoa from 2012 until today became a very different Genoa from the Genoa of, the first 15 years, which was less structured, less sophisticated. Really, you could almost draw a comparison by looking at your local garage that has excellent mechanics. They are really, you totally trust their work. They're not that expensive. You go in, you get your car fixed, and by golly, they do a great job on your car. You go into the garage, yeah, it's a little bit dirty. Tools are everywhere. One person's wearing jeans, another person's wearing sweatpants, another person's wearing coveralls. They're a little bit greasy. Or you can go to the dealership where the floors are spotless. Everybody's wearing the same set of coveralls. It's more expensive, but they will do warranty work. They get original equipment, manufactured parts. They also are ultimately familiar with your vehicle. And not only, are they familiar with your vehicle, when you call up, they say, oh, Len, I haven't heard from you in 6 months. I'm glad you called, because to me, it also looks like you need an oil change. Oh, geez, thanks. And those are the things that, and you can totally trust how the dealership is going to take care of you and your vehicle. So I would really liken the early first 15 years of Genoa being very similar to that neighborhood garage mechanic, with a group of mechanics that were really good, but they were a little bit dirty. we didn't wear uniforms, and we got the job done. We got the job done very well, and we did some big jobs and we did some small jobs. But really, they are two quite different companies, and I think that's probably a very fair assessment. So I led the neighborhood garage.
Okay, that's a great analogy. But from the outside looking in, and indeed talking to some of the folks that work at Genoa, friends of mine and stuff, I wouldn't necessarily describe it as the car dealership. It sounds to me, or certainly the way they articulate it, is that it's more like the Mercedes Formula One team. You guys seem to be sparking on all cylinders right now.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And at one point, partway through the journey, after Gina joined us, and we were struggling over the decision of, who's going to continue to lead this company anyway. And before you go there and think that it was a difficult decision, Gina asked me the wisest question I'd been asked inside Genoa in my career. And she looked at me and said, "Len, which could you not give up? Can you not give up overseeing the operations and what's going on inside this company and making sure your projects are on track and the finance and the HR and all that stuff? Or can you not give up dropping down to Louisiana, Texas, visiting your customers, spending time in the shipyards, learning what they need, figuring out what we're going to do for them so that you can bring it back and then we can do the job?" Because you can't do both. When you're gone, you're not here.
Right.
And when you're here, you're not doing what you should be doing.
Right.
So which can you not give up? And the answer was so easy. I could not give up working with the customers. I love finding out, what do they need? How are we going to help them? How are we going to solve that problem? What can we bring? How can we improve a bit and stretch a bit in order to get that one done? So I couldn't give that up. So that's when Gina officially became CEO. And then we threw around various titles for me over a few years, but here I am, founder and chair of the board. Yeah.
And this has been a wonderful journey that you've taken us through, from your time in growing up in Dartmouth to the time to your time in the Marine Institute and the Royal Canadian Navy, working on that oil barge, your first gig.
I'm a little bit nervous about actually seeing this one day. I'm afraid I'm going to be terribly embarrassed about all the. I hope I didn't spout too much BS your way.
Len, you hit the nail on. You hit the nail on the head when you said somebody's going to listen to this and they're going to find a nugget in there that's going to inspire them. There's all kinds of nuggets in here to inspire people. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do here, is trying to positively impact people one person at a time. Jerry often says to me, it doesn't matter how many people watch this podcast, it's that the right people watch this podcast. And a lot of what you talked about, while you may not like me saying this, it's very inspirational, and many people will be inspired by it. We often ask our guests, Len, and always ask our guests, to leave the audience with one small piece of advice. You've had a great journey. You've built a wonderful company. You're supporting our country by building great ships. It couldn't be better from my perspective. What would that piece of advice that you might give be?
Can you entertain a 3-minute story?
Of course.
A couple of years ago, I had the honor of a lifetime. The Marine Institute awarded me alumni, the inaugural Alumni of the Year award. And I was nominated unbeknownst to myself, and I was presented the award at the graduation ceremony. And they invited me to speak. He said, we'll give you 7 minutes. So I became emotional at the speech, but I rounded up, I think, 5 or 7 things that I wanted to say to the graduating class. And I'll try to remember a couple of them because they were just from my heart. And one was about failure. Like I said, I failed on average 3 times a day. And I failed big time 3 times a week, and even bigger, like 3 times a month. Like it's just continual failure, continual self-disappointment, continual, I forgot this. Oh, I messed that up. Don't be afraid to fail, because every time you fail, you learn. So I have learned a hell of a lot since I started Genoa, because I failed a hell of a lot. I commented in that speech about keeping your shoes shined. And what I've noticed on a personal level, and you may notice that a lot of people are pretty fancy with their wardrobe and they're looking pretty cool, and they forget to take off their bloody sneakers and put on a nice pair of shoes. But it's a reflection of what you bring to your work and your job and your life and your career and everything. So to me, it's a reflection of paying attention to details, complete the picture, complete the package, complete your job, complete it to self-satisfaction. That's good enough is the saying that rubs me the wrong way more than most. I don't like that saying, because I love the enjoyment of completing a job through to completeness, cleaning up, shining my shoes. Now I'm done. And so that was a piece. And the other, the last piece I'll bring is about family, because it's, I remember commenting, my kids were in the audience, 3 daughters, Gina was there. And I did choke up when I said, love your family. But you learn from your family so much. They kept me humble. There's nothing, I mean, wrong, Dad. I hear it all the time, and it keeps me real. And your family can keep you real, because they don't have to, I can show up at a board table as the chair of Genoa Design and nobody's going to look at me and say, wrong. But at home, they can look at you and say, wrong.
Maybe, Len, after watching this podcast, some of your board may do that.
Maybe. But, your family are going to keep you real. They really are. And they see beyond whatever facade you want to bring to work and whatever. I mean, we try to be ourselves, but there's an element of, okay, I'm dressed and my hair is brushed and I'm going to be professional now. I'm going to work. There's a certain element that you put that up, and people don't go too far, and your family will go too far, and it's valuable because it keeps you real.
100%.
There you go.
You are the present, and we need you right now. Damn right, I say. 8th piece of advice, be present. Lastly, on this occasion, I'd like to acknowledge that I owe everything I am to my wife and business partner, Gina, and my 3 daughters, Joanna, Lauren, and Julia. You keep me real. I've learned more from you than from anyone else in my life. Last piece of advice, learn from your family and love them like it's your last day. From the bottom of my heart, thank you all very much.
Thank you for bringing your authenticity to this conversation, Len.
It was a lot of fun.
Well,
I have talked about myself enough for the next week. Thank you very much for listening.
well,
And
ladies and
great questions.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, another great episode of GaleForceWins. What a privilege it was to have Mr. Leonard Pecore on the conversation with us today. There's no doubt about it. Genoa Design is doing wonderful things, both for our country in designing great ships for Canadians to serve on, but around the globe as well. And in so doing, providing a solid living for a lot of people in Newfoundland. And that's a solid kind of foundation that we need. And it's the kind of thing that Newfoundland needs into the future. It's been such a privilege to have you on the conversation here today, Len. Thanks very much. And I always leave the audience with my own piece of advice, and that is that the world needs more Leonard Pecore. Thanks, Len.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Jerry. And thank you, everybody.
Two friends, Alan Dale and Jerry Carew, who grew up just a few streets apart in St. John's East End, have been separated by Canada's geography for 3 decades. They came together virtually during the pandemic to chat about like-minded interests. Alan lives in PEI and Jerry in Newfoundland. Thriving in remoteness has been a common theme for both of them during the pandemic. GaleForceWins, the podcast is the result.
Thank you for tuning in to GaleForceWins. That's GaleForceWins, WINS.com.